You're listening to the Live Out Loud podcast with River Wynn and Michelle Flamer.
Hi, River.
Hi, Michelle.
Hey, you have an extra big smile on your face this morning.
I do. I'm really excited because we have a returning guest today, someone
yeah, we
I really admire and love her creative process. So, Sarah Greenman is back with us today. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. Yay, she's back. We got you. We're roping you in. I'm doing my little rope. Oh, get you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. I know solstice is almost here. I love when the
Full moon though
I
tonight.
know full moon tonight, and I feel like when the year is circling the drain, like something good is coming.
It's a good energy. It's a potent energy, it feels like right now.
Yeah.
When you talk like that, River, sometimes I'm thinking about the SNL, like, you know, the Schweddy balls or the
I
scene
don't know
where
what that
like,
is.
or like,
Oh my God, it's
you
so
know,
funny.
it's,
I haven't
have you
seen
heard of
that.
that before? Oh my God. Okay, real quick, because Sarah obviously already knows it. So Alec Baldwin comes on and they're like a very local, very independent NPR type like of station. And the way you said that, I was like, oh man, because when I bite into these balls of yours, like it's
Oh,
all
isn't
these
it Anna Gasteyer and somebody else? They're like
oh,
two
and it's
podcast hosts.
yeah, they're podcast hosts.
They talk
It's
about food. They're like
and muffins,
foodie.
like
Oh my
like
gosh.
and Betty White was the one for the
Yes.
muffin. Like your muffins are so warm when they're
This feels very up my alley. I should check this out.
I'll send you both
Yeah, send it to
SNL
me.
links. They're hilarious. But anyways, I know a lot of people understand like, you know, hey, when you come down to Schweddy's balls, they're delicious. Sarah, you have written a book.
I sure have.
But before we go into that, can you tell some of the newer listeners a little bit about who you are and what lights you up and all that other fun stuff?
Happy to. Thank you for having me back on the pod.
Yeah.
It's exciting to see you both and hear you. Yeah, my name is Sarah Greenman. My pronouns are she and they, and I live in rural Oregon. And I'm an artist and a storyteller. And I think of myself as like a creative midwife. I used to work as a labor and delivery person and doula. And so I think about the creative process as kind of like a midwifery skill. Um, I'm sort of in my past life and current life, I guess. I was a playwright. I still do a lot of that. Um, I paint mostly abstract and representational work with acrylic. I love painting. I love illustration. I just love creativity. And so that's my jam. I also am a mother to two young kids under the age of 18. So I think of myself as sort of in my fierce mothering era right now. That's a big piece of who I bring to this work. And I'd also say that I really show up as a community organizer, and I do a lot of social and racial justice work. And I think a lot about right relationship, how to be in right relationship with each other,
Mm.
the land we're on, with our non-human neighbors and siblings, trees and animals and elements. So I think of the world in a really holistic way as a creator and as a mother and as a friend. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's a good piece.
I love hearing people
Now,
talk about themselves.
it
It's always
is really
different,
fun.
right? I always am like
Wait,
curious about what we say about ourselves.
I
And
know.
mine
I love
changes.
it. It was beautiful.
well, one thing I want to actually ask you, because I was talking to River about it a little bit, and I saw recently, I think yesterday, you posted some photos in, you know, kind of correlation with the book coming out and, you know, just sharing. But River took those photos of you, and and we're talking about the creative process. I'm really curious because I haven't had the pleasure of being in front of the lens with River like that. How is River's creative process within photography? And like
Mm.
when you work with her in that space, I think it'd be really fun to just share a little bit on that before we kind of roll into the book.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting. I don't get to hear this very often, so I'm like, okay.
I loved being photographed by River. She photographed 3 generations of my family, my
Yeah,
daughter,
beautiful.
myself, and my mother. And I chose, I mean, there's a lot of really amazing photographers all over the state of Oregon. I chose River though because I could tell she's in relationship with the story she's telling, and she's really telling a story. And at the time, I wanted to capture that sort of fleeting moment in my family system where my daughter was 16. She's trans and so has transitioned as much as a 16-year-old
So
can.
beautiful.
And she was just in her like beautiful becoming, right? She was in the becoming moment. And my mom was 70 this year, so really stepping into her cronehood. And I was really thinking about us as like that maiden, mother, crone, trifecta that you see a lot in Celtic religious culture and a lot of earth cultures all around the world, actually. And I was just thinking of us that way. And so I knew that River would understand what we were doing as a family, and that she would find not only a location for us to express that, but invite us into a conversation about it so that when we were photographed, that would translate. I think of River as a translator, like an emotional translator.
I'm getting full body chills right now, by the way.
Mm.
It's so cool. So
The
River,
photos are gorgeous.
yeah, how does that feel, River? To hear, like,
Oh, that's so delightful to hear that. And thank you. I received that.
there you go.
Because I think as creatives, we have a hard time sometimes seeing ourselves and
Yeah.
seeing our process and understanding how other people perceive us or how they engage with us and how they feel throughout that process. So thank you for sharing that. That was really beautiful to hear.
Thanks for asking, Michelle. I just love talking about other artists' work.
I
I'm
do
inspired
too.
by
I
other
mean,
people.
well, it's just really rare when we have somebody on the podcast that has also been photographed by her. And I just thought you would be with the topic of creativity and that it's just another modality of creativity, obviously. And it's a
Sure.
one, and it's a big one for River. It's her part of her livelihood. So I just thought it would be really cool to get that perspective from you.
Mm.
So share the book now. What is this labor of love that you have created?
Oh, I'm so excited to share it because it really is like a love bomb. It's this joy bomb. It's a prayer, really, like a prayer of gratitude to everyone who's walked alongside me in this life. And my work is as a creative, and I really see creativity as your bone deep, innate tool for understanding yourself in the world and then being in relationship with the world. It's a way to sort of surface what you think, what you feel, and what you know. I think we don't give ourselves a lot of credit for what we know. And
Mhm.
how we know it, I think, is usually creativity. So the book is really with that in mind. And I
Who did
want,
you write it? Who did you write it for?
yeah, it's really for anyone who has a story to tell. It's for those who want to transform their own writing and art into a tool for healing and justice, community building. It's for people who are seeking a deeper and more resonant connection to nature. It's for, sure, artists, but also people who don't think of themselves as creatives, right? Those with experience and those with none at all. It's really for people who are in the conversation, teachers, parents, healers, activists, meaning makers, right? Those folks that are really wanting to strengthen and empower and activate their creative practice.
I
And I,
think that's a really good point for me to share the quote, if I can, from the book that I saved, because
oh,
there was
sure.
this one quote early on that I just really spoke to me. So I'm going to read it. Um, Think back to when you were a child. Did you ever talk to a plant or a rock or a flower? Did you ever turn your lunchbox into a bird's nest? Did you ever find another use for your dinner plate? A frisbee, perhaps? Did you ever locate a tool and use it for something it was never designed for? Did you ever pretend you were someone else or make believe you were an animal? Did you devise a way to fool your siblings into thinking something was true or untrue? Did you ever build something without following the instructions? then you, my love, are a creative being. No ifs, ands, or buts. And that really spoke to me because I'm working as a preschool teacher right now at an outdoor nature school. And one of our beliefs of the school is that, all kids are artists. All kids are scientists. All kids are exploring and interacting with the world. And I think that that's an innate thing that all children do. And then we kind of lose our connection to that as we grow up and become adults, and we start, hearing the narratives from the world that tell us that we have to be certain things or we're not certain things. And
Right.
we lose that innate connection to creativity. And we start telling ourselves that we're not creative. How many people do you hear? They listen to a choir singing. They're like, oh, I wish I could sing. Well, anybody can sing. We can all sing. You may not sing that well, but you can sing and you can always learn. And I think it's the same with creativity. So when I read that, that really spoke to me because I know I hear a lot of adults say, I'm not creative. I wish I were creative. I wish I could create. And so, Sarah, I would love to hear you speak to that. As a creative, I think people get so focused on what they produce versus the actual innate sense of creativity that we can all access.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a section in the book where I talk about, I'm like in praise of amateurism. And
Yeah.
amateur is one of my favorite words. Unfortunately, it's been like, it has this negative connotation, right?
Mm,
Past century, really, maybe used as a pejorative, but I think like we should
I call
reclaim,
it a beginner mentality also.
right? Like, let's re-endow amateur with its original meaning, which actually is, it comes from the Latin amare, which means to love something, or the
Mm.
French, like to be a lover of something. And
mm,
so I really love amateurism as as a way of thinking about like we all deserve the joy of making something new that wasn't
mm,
before, that comes from our own experience. And so that kind of practice is a pleasure practice, a joy practice. That's not an art practice, right? Like we're not the end result isn't art. It's creativity for creativity's sake. And I really appreciate that part about this book too, and what I wanted to convey with the book, which is it's a path, not a product.
mhm. Will you
So,
share the name of your book with everyone?
Yeah, it's called the Creative Alchemy Cycle. How
Mm,
to activate your creativity to wake up and get free.
I love that so much.
so for me, when I think about writing a book, my first inclination is, what the fuck would anybody read my book for, right? Like, do
I've had
you
that thought too.
well, I was curious, how did you though get through and push through that thought? Because I think there's a lot of people, and I know like our friend Michelle, my friend Michelle, she's been wanting to write a children's book for so long. Like since I first met her, I've been hearing about this. And I even did a chat GPT outline for her and sent it to her just to see if I could spark something, but there is a sense for her that it feels fraudulent, like she's not a real writer or not a real something like there's something in our brain that synapses that tells us, well, we don't have like who the hell's gonna who wants to learn from me? Or like there's that imposter syndrome kind of going on. And so how did you I'm really curious how you pushed through that in order to just be like, I'm writing this and it'll find the right people.
Well, that's just it. I mean, have you ever heard a story and thought, yeah, that's me, or heard a story that changed you?
Hmm.
Like we all have, right?
Yeah.
Stories are our number one and first currency. And so, yeah, to your point about like this fraudulent feeling or this imposter syndrome, you called it, I think. Um, yeah, I feel the fear of being held accountable for my words and stories, and I do it anyway because I think the alchemy part of the creative alchemy is the sharing it. And that helps you be in community, that helps you be a whole human
Mm.
There are quiet and fallow periods of life, and then there are really productive and front-facing periods of life. And so I wrote the book over a period of 4 years, and now it's suddenly going to splash into the public on a publication date. And that act of sharing it says, I trust you with my experience, the proverbial you.
Sure.
I also trust my own experience. I trust myself with what I feel, what I think, and what I know. And that is super powerful. So speaking something into the free air has its own kind of power. I mean, we've all read a fairy tale where
Mhm.
the princess or the witch or the boy in the woods was instructed to say the thing out loud 3 times. And I
Mhm.
think there's a power in that in our fairy tales and in our lives, which is if you say it into the free air and you make it known, then you get to be responsible for it and have agency over your own life. And then also you get to be called into accountability, which is a deeply human process that I think we are afraid of. We're afraid of being accountable for our own choices and our own work, whether that's bringing us wonderful good things or it's a history that we need to account for. So I love sharing it because it says, I
Mhm.
trust myself. I believe that being accountable is a holy act. And I think there are people out there who are going to go, yeah, me too.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so much, I'm halfway through the book right now as I'm reading it, and so much of it resonates for me as I'm in a space of life where I'm evaluating my relationship with creativity and taking ownership of my knowledge
Yeah.
and my experience and my wisdom, and coming to a space of recognizing that for so much of my life, I've held myself back deeply in creative ways because of that fear of being seen, being heard, um, and the
Well, and
accountability of that.
you're opening yourself up to criticism also.
Yeah, of
Hmm.
Like
course.
with
Which is
that
scary.
comes like putting your heart out there in a book, pages, art on a canvas, photography, whatever that is. It's like you're always, the minute you share it with the public, you're also, the other side of it is really about, having it out there and leaving room for someone to say, well, that's not art, and things like that. But what I'm really curious about within your process, because you said it took around 4 years to create this,
Mm.
was there a time of day that you like to write? Was it like when you got energy to write? Like, was it just when it was like all random? Like it,
I think writers are really different in the ways that they birth their books.
yeah.
And some folks are like, no, you show up at the desk and you write from 9 to 5 like a normal job, and you show up regardless of your level of inspiration, and you do the dang thing. And that's a beautiful way to work. And as a
But
mother,
that's not for everybody.
no, it's not. And as a mother who has a child with multiple intersecting disabilities, as a rural person who is also managing a household and land, and as somebody who also has another job, it's really impossible to do that. So I will say there's a gendered piece to this too. A lot of men that I know have a much more regimented ability to write their work, and they also have a support team at home in the form of usually a wife.
Hmm.
And that's a total generalization, but it is a pattern that we see throughout history in terms of male writers. Women writers, on the other hand, the ones that were really successful, usually had no children and were considered hermits and,
Well,
outcasts.
didn't J.K. Rowling's like write Harry Potter like in her car? Like she was homeless for a while?
A lot of folks, yeah. And so I wrote mine in the wee hours, and I was also, this book is a
Oopsie. Just- Hold on.
So, I feel like there's actually a s- a section of like the very first section of my book sort of speaks to this if you're interested in hearing it.
Yeah, we'd love
Yes.
to. You're gonna
Yes.
read? You're gonna read
Yeah.
something?
Is that okay?
Totally.
Yes.
Please
Please
go
do.
for it.
It's just my invitation at the beginning of the book. It starts with a poem. I'll skip the poem, but then it sort of, this is my invitation to the readers. You began this journey as a shapeshifter, a tuning fork for the transmission of divine information. Everything that followed from your birth to this moment has been an experiment in creativity. What you see and how you see it, and the sense making you craft out of that seeing is called living. And that, dear one, sums up the creative act. Here's what I know for sure. This is your one and only precious life on this fragile blue dot. And the quality of your hours is the quality of your days, is the quality of all the time you have here. Breath, nourishment, belonging, and joy are non-negotiable. They're your birthright. There's no need to hide yourself away or eke out your gifts in small, digestible bits. Hit us with your wholeness. Who are you saving it for? My advice, spend it all, give it away, live out loud, and for goodness sake, don't compare the gifts you were given to the gifts of those around you. If we are to survive this life and create a thriving future for those yet to come, we need every last one of us to deliver our gifts into the world to help each other get free. The Creative Alchemy Cycle is a celebration of your creative work in the world. Use it as fuel. Burn it up and let the exhaust propel you forward. Do not be afraid. You already have everything you need to begin.
Mm.
I love
Mm.
that.
So good.
Beautiful.
So that's why I wrote it and why I'm sharing it, because I want to hit the world with my wholeness. I'm doing
Yeah.
what I'm asking, right? I'm just tired of hiding,
Mm-hmm.
eking out my brilliance in small little bits. And I'm not afraid of being seen as a confident person anymore. I think women are so often sort of put in this box that if you say, that's right, brilliant, brilliant, creative, generative soul, that's me. People go, oh, who does she think she is, right? That
Mm-hmm.
shitty committee in the back of your head. But I'm here to say, bring it. We need you. The world needs you.
I often think about what a different place would be if our girls and our boys, any gender, they just grew up being told that. If our children grew up being told that you get to be who you are loudly, visibly, and you get to take up space and be seen and heard instead of conditioned to shrink ourselves.
But we have to be the example for them. I mean, we
Yeah.
have to show
Totally.
them what that
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons the book, it follows the cycle of the year. And,
Mm,
there's the act of hitting us with your wholeness and showing up for yourself, right? I offer a bunch of practices on how to do that. But then we dive deeper because not everyone can show up the same way.
hmm
Society is not set up to receive everybody's wholeness in the same way. I know that Black and brown women in my sphere are held to a very different
mm,
accountability model than I am. And so I make space for that in the book, and I not only make space for it, but foreground it. And in some of those middle chapters, we really talk about how our creativity informs our activism and our accountability
hmm
and what that means and how to be in right relationship with really all of those around you, not just your immediate circle of
Yeah.
like-minded people.
It's interesting because I was talking to my team at work, and we were talking about creativity in the sense of outreach or creating I mean, most of my job is really to like reach out to new companies and tell them why our software is more special than something else. But as a sales professional and someone who's been doing this for like a gazillion years, I get really excited by creating different types of templates for the outreach.
Yeah.
And I realize like I'm just in that creative, I'm in a creative mode. It's for work, but it still is like I love the idea of creating crafting an email that allows someone to that pushes like or that entices someone to like, you know, reach out back out to me or reply to me or click on the link 10 times or whatever that looks like, right? Like it's fun. Like I feel like at work all day, all week long, like I get to be creative in that space. And a lot of people wouldn't think that, but I look at it that way as far as sales goes because it's just part of who I am.
Yeah.
Sarah, would I'm curious your thoughts on this. Does creativity touch every portion of life? Is creativity like the undercurrent of life?
Yes, I think it's the undercurrent. I don't know if it touches every single corner of the
Mm.
world, because of how we see ourselves. But I don't feel like super creative when I'm doing my taxes.
Mm-hmm.
But but I sure
But
can
your
make more
CPA
money.
might feel
Yeah,
creative in
totally.
doing your taxes.
Yeah, I think that there are ways in which, as you just mentioned, Michelle, there's ways to bake it into everything. I work as a nonprofit professional. I'm an executive director, and I find ways to bake it into everything I do. And the beauty of that is not only do I enjoy my work more, but those that are affected by my work, the ripple effect of my work, it feels more authentic because it is. It feels more thoughtful because it is. And it feels more holistic and all encompassing because it is.
Mm.
So I think there's ways to bake it into everything.
I mean, I created a holiday poem with my company in mind, and everybody loved it. And when I send it out as an outreach email, it's really fun to get the response. Like I'm actually getting responses like, "Hey, that was really cute or funny," or and I'm like, "Well, good. We'll just keep this conversation going now."
Yeah, that's why I say joy is a birthright. I
Yeah.
don't think things have to be joyless, especially our work. If we're going to keep doing it, we need a carrot, and it's not just money. Like you have to love it.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think I know for me at least that has been a struggle with the creative piece is when you are creating solely from a space of trying to earn a living and take care and provide, especially as a mother of children, like that can really sometimes just zap you of the joy that you have for your creativity. It can really disconnect you from that depth in your creativity of love and joy with it because creating solely for money is hard sometimes to do.
Sure is.
Well,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it just feels kind of stagnant. Like
Yeah.
it comes from a place of lack instead of abundance, right? Like we always talk
Yeah.
about. So I think it's really important that if you're doing a job, I mean, I always say we're not trees, you can move, right? Like I think it's really important that people do what they feel purpose for because as my mom was recently a guest on the podcast. And so one of the things that we talked about was the fact that she told us when we were younger that if we wanted to be a garbage collector, that we be the best garbage collector that we could possibly be. And that if that's what we wanted to do, that the money would come because through loving something, you tend to then be good at it. She's like, the money might come not from just shelling, chucking garbage all day or whatever. It may come when you're in management or when you start to realize processes. And, she was trying to explain like that's how the money might come in that position. But it's kind of true though. I mean, I think you just have to find whatever it is that you love and just understand that it's probably going to be good for you if you're happy.
I think too, a big piece of it is how you show up in community.
Mhm.
And we need everybody to do all.
Hmm.
And so a lot of this book is also about how your creative work connects you to or honors your connection to the larger community. I think a
Mm.
lot about like oh gosh, it's Adrienne Marie Brown who talks about the starlings, right? The murmurations
Hmm.
of community members. And so I think about our organizing work and our creative work, thinking of like who's taking out the garbage and who's there like to receive you when you go to the shop and who's there to make sure that food is being shipped to your grocery store so that you can get what you need to feed your right. It's all part of this interconnected web. And so I like thinking about this idea that Adrienne Marie Brown talks about in her book, Emergent Strategy, around flocks of starlings that move together in sort of a synchronistic way. And so I think about our creative work as that as well. The
Oh my
community.
God, if you haven't experienced the starlings, like it is amazing to watch them whoosh through the air and like
Yeah.
how they all work together. And it just looks like, I mean, it looks like magic when you're watching it unfold in person, looking up
Yeah.
sky.
A beautiful model for leaderless organizing, but you have to be attuned. I guess the science behind it is that each starling is attuned to the 7 closest birds around them, and they're receiving information only from that small, tiny group. But there can be millions of them, but if they're all doing it, they know where to go and when, so they don't crash into each other and make a big mess of it. So I think about our creative work as that signal to noise ratio between you and the closest people around you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful analogy.
Mhm.
Sarah, what else would you like us to know about your book? What do you love about it the most?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a baby of mine, so I love it in its
Mm,
entirety. But my biggest hope is that it is a tool for folks to honor themselves really deeply and honor their work, whether they consider themselves a creative or not. I hope that it is a manifesto, an evangelical creativity sermon that enters into their heart and helps them expand their sense of what they think about their own story, because their story matters. I want
I
people
want to
to.
know what you didn't put in the book.
Hmm. Well, a lot of it is, it's a sort of mix of creative manifesto and then memoir style stories. Each chapter begins with this thing I call a homily or a story of the season. And it's a memoir style story from me. It's sort of me weaving words and making meaning of my own experiences in my creative journey. And so there were a lot of things that I didn't put in there, like the fact of my coming out late in life. There are some things that just didn't quite make it in because it didn't make sense for this book, and they're tucked away for another book.
Yes,
I was going
there
to
is
ask,
going
are
to
you
be
planning to
another
write
book.
more?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my publishing company, they're called To Home Publishing Company, and they really foreground queer, feminist, BIPOC
Ooh.
writers.
Mm,
I myself am not a BIPOC writer, but I am queer and feminist. And so a lot of their work is to make sure that there's an avenue for writers like me to have a
mm.
consistent publishing experience. So I'm writing my second book as we speak, and I'm excited to continue working with them.
Oh my goodness.
Yay. So when is the book going to be released?
Our official publication date is December 21st. That'll probably come and go really quickly. That's only a week away.
Yeah,
So
it's coming up fast.
That's what I was going to say.
yeah, so it's available on that terrible but sometimes essential for publishers space called Amazon.
Mhm.
And also people can find it on my website at sarahgreenman.com.
I'll put it in
And
the show
then
notes.
yeah, and then also a publishing date sometimes is like a due date for a baby. Like we hope it comes out that day, but we're having some distribution issues, and it may come out the 22nd or the 23rd, but it'll be out right around Christmas. And I'm just so deeply grateful to be able to share it with readers.
Can you pre-order it right now on Amazon?
I can, yeah. I will say that ordering it on the publishing date, this is good for anyone to know. If you're working with independent artists, ordering it on the day it publishes actually deeply affects the algorithm so that it gets seen by a much larger audience.
Mm.
Pre-sales are great, but they don't affect that algorithm.
Okay, so
Mm.
then I
Yeah,
will
this is
be
interesting behavior.
watching. Okay, then we will all be watching for you to say, it's
Go!
live. Now go by.
It's born. Buy it now.
Yeah, but it'll be out in a week. So I'm sure your listeners will, when they hop on, it'll be available.
Yeah, that'll just be a
Yay.
few days after this podcast episode comes out, right, Michelle?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
I'm
will say,
really
Sarah, like as I'm
excited.
currently reading it, so much of it is resonating for me, and it's just speaking to my soul. So I know it's going to speak to other people as well.
So much, River. I really appreciate your words and I appreciate your readership. Like the fact that anyone wants to read what I wrote, like that's a freaking miracle. Thank you.
Well, it's beautifully written. It truly is. It's beautiful. You should be very proud of it.
Sure I
Yeah,
am.
I cannot wait to get my hands on a copy and probably buy a few more copies for other people to get a hand on. So we're excited. Thank you for joining us this morning in kind of a last minute,
So great.
yeah, booking. And no, we just really appreciate you coming on and being a friend of the podcast. And we just appreciate you in general. Right, River?
Yes, very much so.
Thank y'all.
Yay. Well, hey, have a great holiday and we will talk soon, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to subscribe and share because what do we say, baby?
Sharing is caring.